Welcome to Transform Now, the podcast brought to you by robotic process automation pioneer Prism. Digital transformation has the potential to reshape the way companies service their customers, engage their employees, and manage their operations. Whether you're looking to develop strategies, tactics, and best practices to positively impact the future of work, or you're curious to learn how other companies have successfully navigated their digital transformation programs, then this podcast is for you. We're here to help you transform now.
Hello, everyone. I'm Brad Hairston with Prism. Welcome to the Transform Now podcast. Today, I'm very happy to have as my guest, Michael Kern, who works with DataRobot, a leading AI cloud company and a Prism Technology Alliance partner. Michael and I will be discussing what DataRobot is all about and how it is making AI accessible to the whole enterprise. Michael, thank you for joining me today. Why don't you start us off with an introduction?
Yeah, happy to. I grew up in Austin, Texas, and I started my tech career there in the RPA space, as a matter of fact. From there, I moved out west. I live out in Southern California now with my wife, and I started working with DataRobot in the AI and ML space about 2 years ago, after about a decade in the RPA space.
Excellent. How have you enjoyed living in San Diego? Which, by the way, possibly the dumbest question ever. We all know that San Diego, their weather is unbelievably great, but you can answer the question.
It's bittersweet a bit, right? It's certainly a wonderful place to be. Southern California, we all know you pay your luxury tax, but there is a luxury of living in Southern California. Beautiful weather. I happen to live pretty close to the beach, so I feel really blessed to have that opportunity. But I miss home.
Michael, what has it been like making the leap from the world of RPA to the world of AI?
It's been pretty fluid, actually. I feel as though RPA sort of primed me and set me up for the AI space really well. And what I mean by that is, firstly, I was really excited to join the company and learn something new. I had no data science or even analytics experience before coming into this space 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I really started to understand algorithms and data science and this very heady, super intelligent space. And it was awesome to step in and go back to school. So that was really, and then just, we all have known that sort of the software world's going toward AI. We've known this for, you could say, a decade, a handful of years at minimum. I'll speak for myself, right? That was going that direction. So it's been really exciting to get into the stuff that organizations are really where the puck is going, if you will. But I think the biggest surprise, if you will, and it was somewhat of a surprise, was that the similarities between RPA and ML, in particular a DataRobot, because we are democratizing data science here in the same way that at Prism, where I worked, right, for 5 years, where we democratize automation. And so that democratization thread continues to exist. And I think I was really set up for that because of the sort of cutting edge nature of what we're doing and the sort of added layers of cultural adoption of a new tech, like beyond the technology itself. Like there's an added layer of how do we actually get people and process to come around to adopting something that's new and unknown and, quite frankly, scary. So it's all the same things that we did at Prism. So it's a very similar kind of recipe and formula. But as I alluded to, it was also really fun just to learn about the techie side, and I get into that too.
Yeah, definitely. DataRobot is certainly a key player in AI, but there's probably some listeners to our podcast that are not familiar with the company. So can you provide an overview of DataRobot and the AI cloud that you guys promote? That would be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I mentioned that it's really this democratization push. We shifted to this cloud AI messaging to accelerate time to value of adopting a technology in general. We all know that, those of us who've been in RPA and are in the AI space, standing up these technologies is just a heavy lift. So we really wanted to accelerate that, but along with that, it had to come the security and governance aspect. So it should be safe to say that you have something like a SOC type 2 certification, for example, and that you're covered from a HIPAA PCI compliance perspective. So we've really pushed hard organizationally from a security perspective to stand up our cloud in a way that's really secure. And so 2/3 of our customers today are on the cloud aspect of what we do.
Okay.
So I'll just start there because we say cloud, and I wanted to just highlight that's a really important aspect of what we do to, like, going back to my initial statement, like how was this stuff adopted at a healthy pace in a way in which there's not too much heavy lifting. But let me get into what DataRobot is and what we do. I think that there's a couple reasons that this organization was formed. One is just the shortage of data science personnel, market in general. If there's going to be an adoption and a pervasion of this space, it comes down to expanding productivity. Let's be honest, in the same way that we did with automation. But there's also two main things that are happening in the marketplace. One is just the democratization of data, right, that we're seeing, very obvious to all of us. And two, you've got this massive automation of processes, which Blue Prism and others have been pushing forward. So that really has compelled our organization to develop a technology, a platform that begins to democratize. And so what we've done is we've really taken the data science lifecycle, which is very complex and there's a lot of depth to it, and we've tried to simplify it as much as we possibly can. And we have developed a way in which you can create a citizen data scientist in the same way that, Brad, that we created citizen developers. Mm-hmm. And so by creating this citizen data scientist, we've really opened the doors to what's possible with machine learning and creating an opportunity to allow this to truly spread and pervade an organization across lines of business. So in a way, it becomes more ubiquitous. And so there's a million angles we could go from here, but at the core of it, what DataRobot has done, and I'll actually give you a quick history lesson. It was the founder of our organization is a guy named Jeremy Atchin. He worked in the insurance industry as a data scientist. So we were founded by a data scientist, and he realized in that role that they weren't scaling machine learning models. They weren't scaling data science. And a lot of what he was doing was really manual and intensive. So he decided to go ahead and create an automation platform to automate the ability to put data through a bunch of different algorithms, basically. Let's test it through hundreds of different algorithms and find out which of those algorithms is the best fit for that particular data set and for that particular question that he was trying to answer, right? Because he was asking a question to his data at the end of the day. And so that kind of formed DataRobot. And actually, I don't know if a lot of folks out there know this, but DataRobot is the category creator of a space called automated machine learning. So we pioneered, in the same way that Blue Prism pioneered RPA, we pioneered automated machine learning. But we didn't stop there. So that's only kind of one major facet of the machine learning lifecycle and that's the development of models, right, at its core. So think about it as like the center of the machine learning lifecycle. But on either side of it, let's just go to the upstream side of it really quickly. Before you even start to develop models, we all know what you have to do. You have to prepare your data. You have to collect your data, right? The data has to be ready. So that's called data prep. And so we developed through acquisition, by the way. We've acquired, I think it's somewhere around 8 companies to develop this platform. We developed that fully integrated into DataRobot. And then further on the downstream side, there's a much newer kind of element to the data science lifecycle today. And it's what we call machine learning operations. It's really productionalizing, right, your models. It's putting them in production, but in a way that's governed, in a way that they can be monitored, in a way that they can be managed effectively. So we've made 2 acquisitions there, fully integrated those into DataRobot, and became one of the world's most advanced end-to-end platforms. And so that's we didn't stop with this. Hey, we pioneered automated machine learning. Cool. We realized that really for organizations to adopt this, you're gonna have to cover the entire gamut or life cycle of data science. And I think that's what makes DataRobot really powerful.
Michael, where does DataRobot typically enter an organization? Is it within an automation program or a BI analytics area or somewhere else? Tell me who your typical buyer is.
Yeah, it is going to depend, of course, on the type of organization, their maturity within their AI maturity in general.
Yeah.
But I will say that primarily you're finding us landing in those analytics and data science circles. Mm-hmm. And so this is a great question. And I think we should sit on this one for a minute because it honestly speaks to like how it's being adopted today, but also where, again, the puck is going and how it's beginning to be adopted and will be, and will continue to be adopted further in the future. And yes, we're landing with these analytics teams. One is these analytics teams may not have a data science capability today, but what have they been responsible for? And they've been responsible for BI and reporting and then getting this out to the lines of business, getting out to executives, right, Brad? And so it's actually a really good space, but a lot of what they're doing is really just descriptive reporting. Let's just report the data that's there. They wanted to be able to do it and are doing now as we speak, and have been doing over the course of the last 5 years, let's say, is bringing in machine learning capabilities to be more predictive and then also more prescriptive in what they're providing to their clients, being their internal customers. So yes, we're landing there. So that's a great example of a citizen data science customer. And so they early on were some of the biggest customers of DataRobot. It's just these analytics teams. Well, this tool is awesome. This tool is giving me the capability to actually build machine learning models, and I don't have to be a data scientist to do it. And so we have, like, for a long time, a majority of our customer base, it was somewhere around 60% were non-data scientists. Now, like any good company, you listen to the market and you say, what's the market asking for? And so we were finding ourselves too in the data science circles as well, because they wanted to enhance their productivity. They wanted to take a lot of the code centric things they're doing, writing their algorithms in their notebooks, things like a Jupyter notebook or a Zeppel notebook, for example. These are examples of data science notebooks that you're writing code in. And they wanted to continue to exist in that sort of canvas, if you will, like the place that they feel most comfortable, but they wanted to be able to augment that with productivity gains. So in other words, they're able to integrate it with DataRobot and use this automated machine learning capability to let them get to model solutions much faster. So what we were able to do with those data science communities was basically like 10x their ability to push out models and therefore deliver more value to the organization. So that's the two sides that we've seen. The point that I made about listening to the market and what is the market after was we realized that we're pretty heavy on the whole citizen side, but the market asking for a little bit more capability on the data science side. Like they want us to be like very techie, kind of code centric with them as well. So we've actually made some acquisitions to ensure that we're really satisfying the data science community as well, which I think is really wise. I think that we're even seeing some instances where the business functions themselves, like a finance or supply chain or manufacturing floor, they're literally bringing on ML as well. So they're going, you know what, I'm going to take the bull by the horns myself, and I'm just going to go ahead and implement machine learning because I can.
Michael, how are RPA and AI, specifically Blue Prism and DataRobot, better together? Can you talk about the combined value proposition?
Yeah. If you think about just a process automation, whether it's in finance or in supply chain or what have you, it's going from A to D right now. I think there's a number of things that we bring to the table adding machine learning. The way that in general we're better together is just taking a process that goes from A to D and then being able to extend it to some degree, because as we all know, like you're kicking exceptions in a lot of ways. You're having to bring in humans to oversee, to correct things. And so what machine learning is going to be able to do is going to be able to come in and just bring that intelligence on top of it, put very simply. So in other words, like you've got the arms and the legs, we've all heard this analogy, and you want to bring the brain in to go, hey, we actually don't need to stop the process at this juncture. We've got enough history, intelligence, data to tell us exactly which way we should go from there. So it gives us the ability to then extend automations more end to end. And I think at the same time, like there's no doubt that we can extract much more value from some of the processes, because you look at we'll get into some of the examples. When you look at those, the amount of money that's saved or earned whenever you put an AI prediction in, like some of these figures are through the roof. That was one of the main things I was blown away with. But when you start looking at tens of millions, in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars, saved or earned, because an AI prediction was able to avoid some wild event, like a money laundering event, or it was able to do something really interesting in the insurance claims, your underwriting spaces, right? And just really helped shift an organization's focus to some of the high risk areas. So it's definitely going to highlight some of those high risk areas in your processes as well.
Right. And Michael, I know DataRobot doesn't require a ton of data to generate the insights that you deliver, but I would imagine another role Blue Prism could play is on the data ingestion side, serving up the right data, the right time, the right format, the right frequency, that type of thing.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I think that it's a really smart way for an organization to own their own data pipelines and augment their data with some of that open source data, we would call it in the space.
Sure.
And that would just be a wise thing to do, is then you're able to ask better questions, ask different questions to your data, develop more predictions, and just be smarter in the way you do your business. So yeah, I think from a very high theoretical level, like there's no doubt, but also just internally where APIs don't exist,
Yeah.
right? And or where we don't have the technical bandwidth, right, to go acquire this data. Why don't we use RPA to do that? Why don't we give RPA robots to business people to go after or to go after data sources that don't have APIs, whether internally or externally.
Yeah.
And let's go get that data and let's cut that restriction, that obstacle. Let's get it out of the way.
The other big play is acting on the insights that DataRobot is serving up. So where you need near real-time action on an insight, that's clearly something that digital workers are really good at. So that to me is even more exciting, just the opportunity to do that faster, more efficiently. I think about marketing analytics, for example, which I know you guys do a lot of that, where you're taking all this information from a customer who's online, you're feeding it into an algorithm to make a prediction on what that customer may want to buy. For example, you want to serve something up and you want to do it right then and there. And that's where digital workers can play a role to act on that with incredible speed.
Yeah, that was a brilliant example. And I couldn't agree more. And I guess that's just a good point to highlight, is where I think there's so much opportunity. Like, I think this is where we're just so nascent and so mature in the space. Because I'll be honest. So I came to this organization, I came to DataRobot super excited about the convergence of RPA and ML, only to realize it's pretty early.
Yeah,
This was 2 years ago. Okay, I had a couple conversations with the RPA COEs and the market's not ready. Darn. But nevertheless, like, I'm still extremely excited and bullish on what the possibilities are, and what you just described just is where we got to take this. And I think this is where the most innovative companies are going to take it. We've got tons of COEs out there who I hope are going to listen to this podcast and we go, holy crap, we could be doing some really cool things with ML and RPA right now. And we didn't even realize it. But it's not even, again, it's not a tech problem in my mind. It could be a maturity problem. It could be a organization needs to mature, but it's not a tech problem anymore. What it's going to be, and I could talk to you about this all day, is the people process challenge. And that's a role that I play here at DataRobot that I think Blue Prism did a really good job with. It's like, let's go educate on how to build these COEs, these divisions. But your example on the marketing piece was, let's not only collect the data, but then take action on what the next marketing medium is we want to send to Brad Hairston or your customer XYZ. And the same thing is true of like inventory movements. They're just like, you can build in the guardrails to go, this can be automated. And if it's outside of this range, then let's send it to the human. Right? Let's send it to someone on our team who has the knowledge and could just oversee it. And I think that gets into a really interesting question about, like, how much do we trust AI? Because just like with the automation, there's the fear. Well, is this a black box AI? Do we really understand? Can we really trust it? And one of the things that we're constantly educating on here at DataRobot is what we call explainable AI. Number one, we have a way in which we can explain exactly how the prediction we gave you came about. What were the inputs that went into it? Let you take a look at it in a graphical kind of way, a graphical interface, charts, graphs, that kind of thing, and make a decision on yourself. Hey, does your intuition, does your judgment fit with this decision? That decision is final. So that's the big one. I think it's one to help people understand. One, we can show you how it came up with explainable AI, but two, we can always ensure that you have control over it if it's outside of a certain range of comfort for us as people.
Right. Michael, can you share a few customer stories of digital workers provisioning DataRobot to solve some complex business problems, possibly in the life sciences or healthcare space, and then maybe one from financial services? That would be fantastic.
Yeah, definitely, Brad. I'll give you an example of a pharmaceutical company we're working with. They're actually out of the UK, and they were doing some case management around drug defects. So they're triaging products that could have some type of defect. And this is obviously huge. A lot of legality, comes into play here when we're talking about the pharma industry. And so what they were aiming to do was take these hundreds of thousands of cases, by the way. So that was the scale at which we saw. Take these hundreds of thousands of cases, and previously they had just built rules-based automations to say, hey, this is the direction we think we could go. We think that this drug defects will be either positive or negative. And they started to find out that there was just tons of false positives as a result. And so what they did was that they came in and they took their robots, and their robots were actually collecting a lot of the data up front. You alluded to this. The data sources were handled by RPA. And then we came in with the machine learning model, and we just took a look at the data, and we said, hey, let's look at all these transactions that are happening, and let's find out where the false positives truly are. And let's put a machine learning model up against it. Really successful. So they ended up not only eliminating almost all the false positives, they also were able to then take a group of 3 people to manage the entire process of, hundreds of thousands of transactions a day, because the machine learning models were able to support, right, the team. And so they only needed a few people now to even manage this process. So the second example is, a financial example. And it's actually very similar in concept to the one that I just described, except in this instance, we're talking about, fraud. But similarly, RPA robots collecting a lot of data on these customers. And they're collecting it from third-party systems. They're collecting it from internal systems. And we're talking about data such as transactional data, financial transactions. We're talking about like customer due diligence. We're talking about even news information was included in this. And that data was collected, brought together, and then assessed by the machine learning model. And so the DataRobot model overlaid the rules-based monitoring. And what we would do is score the data. And we saw that on average, there was between 20% and 60% false positives in that case. We are almost eliminating false positives. So a lot of times we'll see accuracy levels, just to put that in perspective. I should be careful saying almost eliminate, but we're seeing accuracy levels in the 90% in a lot of cases. So granted, the data is sufficient. The model has been quote unquote tuned to really drive the direction that we're looking for. We're seeing a lot of organizations do things on the underwriting side of the business with loans. All right. Because those are very, very risk-based. I had a light bulb moment when I started to go, where does machine learning best fit within RPA? I realized that processes that have the flavor or personality of rules-based monitoring, right? It was a term that we came up with over here at DataRobot. If there's a kind of a rules-based monitoring that's happening. So these 2 examples I just gave, right? We're monitoring products as they go through the life cycle for defects. We're monitoring financial transactions for fraud. We're monitoring inventory for inventory changes, and we need to take action on those as a result. Those are really good areas where DataRobot or machine learning can fit over RPA, right? And I think I have a couple more examples. Predictive maintenance, I alluded to as well. I put that. Triage, I alluded to. But how about just like cash flow prediction monitoring? That's something that we see very commonly, like just predicting your cash flow. Doing accounts receivable predictions is something that we see. And wasn't that like the first major use case we saw in RPA? It was like finance, accounts receivable.
Sure.
And then I mentioned inventory shortages. So the theme you see around all these use cases I'm throwing out is there's this monitoring type of thing.
So Michael, from where you sit, where do you see AI on the rise? Whether that's new use cases, new momentum in an industry, anything along those lines. Just look forward and tell us what you see coming down the pike, if you will.
A recent McKinsey article came out, and it pointed out 78% of companies have AI in only one line of business. And I think there was somewhere around 22%, it's lower 20s, that were even gaining an ROI from their AI capability. So what does that tell us? 1, AI is not scaling. And 2, we're not even making any money off of this stuff. What the heck? And so all that to say is I mentioned it earlier. I think we're at the early stages. And I feel like we've been saying this in the software space for like 10 years around RPA and AI, but I really feel like when you start to like see the convergence of some really impactful technologies, and this is why I chose to be in these 2 spaces, RPA and AI. If you can converge these 2 spaces in a way that is meaningful and scalable, right? The organizational impact is just going to be off the charts. And I think it really does come around to, another thing that was pointed out in that McKinsey article, which is the successful companies, which by the way, there's a big gap between AI leaders and sort of AI beginners, or those who are trying out an AR. It's like a 4X gap. So you're seeing this massive rise in people who are doing AI effectively. And the thing that's called out, right, by McKinsey in their interviews, and by the way, we saw this in our customer advisory board that we just did in November. The executives and the leaders are calling out that it's about education. It's about enablement. It's about standing up a methodology and having governance around how they do that. And one of the biggest things, and all of that is really fancy ways of saying cross-departmental connection. What it boiled down to when you ask these executives, again, in the McKinsey article, in our own customer advisory, it was, we need to do a better job of cross-departmental collaboration. And so one of the things that I try to preach over here and sort of preaching here on your podcast is AI is going to only be on the rise if we solve that problem. If organizations begin to focus on that collaboration and putting methodologies in place that allow you to develop a COE that can effectively serve every line of business in your organization.
Well, Michael, thank you so much for being on the podcast today and sharing with us about DataRobot and how your AI cloud is truly transforming companies. You guys are a highly valued partner of Blue Prism, and we look forward to bringing our combined solution with DataRobot to many more clients in 2022. So thank you again, and be well.
Oh, thank you, Brad. Yeah, I had a good time. Yeah, thank you for letting me, dump my brain onto your podcast a little bit today. I'm very excited about the partnership too.
Thanks for tuning in to Transform Now. For more insightful discussions on digital transformation and more, check out our podcast channel where you'll find all of our previous episodes. To make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. And if you like what you heard, please leave us a review. For more information about digital transformation and the future of work, check out blueprism.com to learn how Blue Prism's digital workforce is enabling enterprise transformation now.